Hey, hey, my creative friends. I am Shannon from Shannon's Studio, and we are here to have creative life tips. We talk about creative life every day and just talk about one thing a day, kind of to help ourselves make things a little easier to have a creative life and to be active in a creative life. So, hey, Rose. So Joseph has been sick, just real quick, before we start our tip. Joseph's been sick since the weekend. He hasn't been like throwing up, but he's just had a fever and low-grade fever. So, so it's been a little bit, well, our plans have changed, obviously, but I just thought he would be better by now, but he isn't. Well, I mean, he is today. Tomorrow he's going back to school, but it lasted longer than I thought. So, let's see. Okay, we've been talking about marriage because it's the love month, and so we will have a couple more days of talking about marriage. And then, I think, for my Free-for-All Friday, we're going to have Alan on. Alan and I are going to talk about a little bit about marriage, or answer your questions, or talk about your thoughts about marriage. And so we're going to do that live Friday, Valentine's night. So that's going to be our Valentine's. So, well, for tonight. So what the tip is for tonight is tell our story, or tell your we story. Tell the story about you two as a couple. And when I thought about this, I thought about the different ways we can tell our story. We can obviously talk about it. And when we gather for families, a lot of times families will do that. They will tell stories about the family. They will tell, I call it family lore, because sometimes the stories change. But it's fun to get together, talk about, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Oh, we had so much fun at this or that. And it's just part of family gatherings. And what happens is, family stories, and couple stories in particular, they can make the whole aid to making the family culture. There's lots of things that are important to the family. They're the origin of you as a couple, you're the origin of the family. And so they're important, and kids remember, couples remember. In fact, there's Dr. Karen Skerrett. She has a book, Hey Tricia, talking about stories, our we stories as a couple. So Dr. Skerrett says, we stories, that's the phrase that she uses, we stories serve 4 vital positive functions for couples. They help shape the couple's mutual identity. So it's like two people coming together, and your stories and your storytelling about what you talk about shape who you are as a couple. If you're talking about sports all the time, and going to sports things, and planning for sports things, and having tailgate parties, and that's your story that you tell people, we went to do this, and then that starts to become your mutual identity. I know families who they're very sports oriented, and like the Van Brunts, and others who are very service oriented, or just different things, and they take on this culture, this family culture. Okay, so she says they help shape the couple's mutual identity. They also provide meaning and purpose in the couple's life. So it provides meaning and purpose in the couple's life. So if you as a couple decide this is who we are, or you're not even like deliberately decide, but you just start doing it, and it starts to become a natural consequence of the relationship, then that starts to become your purpose. If it's serving people, or if it's helping animals, or if it's family history, or if it's family outings, or if it's camping, or all any kind of thing, it starts to become your purpose and meaning as a couple. Okay, she also says serves as guides for current interaction and future growth. So your stories are what can, the ones you're telling happen right, are the current things you're doing right now. It what's the word I'm looking for? If you were right there, you would tell me. It kind of encapsulates the current situation that's going, and kind of, directs, kind of, points you both in the same direction of where you're going in the future. And then she says, and are positive repositories of the couple's wisdom and a means of transmitting their legacy to others in their lives. So your children. In other studies, they've shown children who hear the stories, know their ancestors, are part of that legacy of who they came from. The benefits are that they are better off. And so that's another thing that helps. I like that, the couple's wisdom. And your motto and theme. Yes, it kind of becomes that motto and theme of your coupledom, of who you are as a couple. And that can't help but being transmitted to your kids. So, you have to kind of look at what is our couple story. What is the we story we have? I meant to ask Alan what he thought our we story is. And for us, I think he would agree, our we story is that we strive very hard as a couple to, are very religious. We would call ourselves sometimes religious fanatics because we would make choices to do church things, or we make choices to go on the church activities and serve with the youth or serve with the children, or we would make those kinds of choices. And that kind of became the story of Alan and I even before we had kids. And then when the kids came, it just expanded our circle. So some of the ways that you can physically share your stories is I put in my Facebook Shannon Studio Facebook page, I put in a canvas. I did 2 canvas pieces. I was doing this practicing this transfer ink thing, and you would print out the ink I printed out the story on a paper and then put it on the canvas and rubbed it with a certain solvent, and it transferred onto the page. It's not very good. It's old. It's got to be 12 years old. It's really old. And so it's faded and stuff like that. But I saw a card that talked about the third person story, talked about this couple story like in third person, but it was a wedding card or something. And I thought that's really fun to make it kind of an anonymous story, but it's your own story. And when people read it, they will know it's your story. So I did a third person, a boy and a girl story. And that's on my Facebook page. That's been hanging in our house. And when I asked Jessie, because I didn't have any pictures of it, so I asked her, I said, do you remember those canvases? She goes, oh yeah. And I said, well, they were in the bedroom, but I know you've moved things. Do you even know where they are? She goes, oh yeah. So she knew exactly what I was talking about. Tricia says, I think you always leave things better than you find them in all areas. Are you talking about me, Tricia? That's nice if you are. But that's nice even if you aren't. You're saying it about somebody else. But so third person, finding some creative ways to express your we story. So that was one way that we did, that I did our story. And Tricia says, yes, she was talking about me. It's sometimes, I'm going to veer off for a minute. Sometimes I was doing this thing with this other person, and this person was telling me compliments. And it is so hard sometimes to just soak that in. Sometimes it just makes us self-conscious. And so she said, me and Alan. So you always leave things better than you found them, Alan and I, in all areas. That's really nice. And so sometimes those compliments are hard to take and like I said, leave us self-conscious. And it's an art and a skill to be able to learn how to accept those graciously. So thank you, Tricia. So now back to our regular scheduled programming. So another way you can do, which I'm sure many of you do, is scrapbooks. Our kids, the scrapbooks I did for them, they loved them. But they would also sit with our family scrapbooks and look through them and talk about them. And so they had pictures of our family life. And that's Alan and my story. We have a big giant bowl and we've just thrown pictures in it. Because after a point, I didn't do photo albums. I didn't do scrapbooks. I liked it at one point, then I didn't like it at one point. And so, but we have them in this big bowl, and the kids would literally, they're not home now, and we're not home, but they would get that bowl out and they would go through it. And some of their friends would be with them too, and they would go through it. And so that was a super easy way to keep our family story current. I mean, like in the part of their life, part of the goings on in the day, is just we threw them all in a bowl. And that's kind of funny because a lot of times you have them in a box hidden away, and just bring them out so that they have that current and they have that interaction with them. And you do too. Because when I would sit and look through them, it's like, oh, I remember this. Oh, I can't believe we did this. And so it kind of goes through your mind. I've seen little wall hangings where they put in the important dates, like the date you met and the date you got married and the date, you had your children, and they would just have, the day, the month, the day, and the year in number form, and then sometimes they'd have a little caption of what it was, sometimes not. So just a little art piece. Last year, and I should put this up too. Last year I did hearts. I painted watercolor hearts and then put the kids, everybody's birth dates, our immediate family, everybody's birth dates on them. And that was a super easy downloadable one, and I will find it and put it up. You could just paint in the hearts, and then it has the birth dates. Another one is, another little wall hanging is Truly, Madly, Deeply. There's a song about love, truly, madly, deeply, since 1982 when we were married. Then also another thing for our story is I created a brand for Alan and I. Alan has always loved the ranch life, and he created himself a brand as a teenager. And he's always, used it periodically on things, and he used to use it a lot. And so I decided, well, why don't we create a brand for us? And I talked to him about it, and I asked his opinion about it. So we have like a brand for Alan and I. And I've used it on a couple of our scrapbook pages. And, it's just fun to have another representation of us. It's kind of our story. And then Jessie does an anniversary book. She does one where every anniversary they have a book, and they go out to dinner and they talk about what's happened during the year, and they write in it, and they reminisce, and new goals, and just whatever they feel like, kind of in this little anniversary storybook. So there's lots of ways. I'm sure you have some ways that you can share with us as well about how you might tangibly, or even not tangibly, even activities, events, or whatever, to continue to have and talk about your we story. They shape they shape you as a couple, make that special connection. The Dr. Skerrett says, the memorable image or metaphor that emerges can become a couple touchstone and positive symbol of the relationship, and used as an anchor during challenging times. I don't remember reading our story, that Canvas one that I have uploaded, but when I do, I would stop periodically and just read it, and it was just like, oh my goodness, we have had a full life experience, and it would touch me. And just like there, it can be an anchor during challenging times when you're wondering, what am I doing here? Not that I ever thought about that, but then you can have those things, those tangible things around you that talk about who you are as a couple, what your purpose and direction are. So, and that goes right along with making these creative things and stuff tangible in your house. That is the tip. Tell your we story. Have tangible things that share your we story. And that, I think, is all for tonight. Add your comments about how you think we can share our stories. So, and remember, you have a creative heartbeat, so listen for it, and I will be back tomorrow. Bye.